Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Sconcy Business, and today we're here with Seth Estrada, also known as Seth MineYour.Biz Estrada, and he's got a lot of great insights for mining, passive income, a lot of things that I do touch on, but also things that I don't touch on. So I'd love to give his insight, or rather share his insight with you guys watching. So without further ado, if you'd like to give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself, that would also be a fantastic way to start.
Sure. First off, Scott, thanks so much for having me on the channel. I mean, really, I've been watching your content for quite some time, watching your ascent across various different platforms, the moves that you're making. Really, the thing that I've learned by watching some of your content is that I just shouldn't blink. Your arrow's definitely pointed up. So to anybody who's watching his channel, clearly you're in the right place. And thank you for having me on. My background is in corporate training. I've worked for several Fortune 50 companies, among them Microsoft, Google, Samsung Telecom USA, based out of Dallas, Texas. It's not what you expect when you're talking about a Korean company, but that's where they were based. And so I've got a pretty strong background in relaying highly technical pieces of consumer oriented information, consumer tech, to audiences that are supposed to sell, sort of a train the trainer type background. Got into cryptocurrencies in a much more vocal way at the end of 2017, right during the bull run, when there was a lot of activity. It was really exciting. And then built a brand around mining and passive income, but specifically passive income through mining, and helping people who are kind of PC enthusiasts decide, should I engage in cryptocurrency mining? And if so, how do I start? What does that look like for me if I'm a small scale miner? Maybe I'm just a gamer and I've got a couple of GPUs and a gaming rig. What does that mean for me financially? Can I write it off? For example, disclaimer, I'm not a CPA or anybody who specializes in finance, but a lot of people have those sorts of questions that I realized, okay, we can do better and we can probably help each other. And that's been the main thrust of my content. Fast forward to today, it's led to some amazing opportunities by way of consulting, been able to deploy small to mid-scale mining operations with hundreds of miners inside of warehouses and all kinds of spots where we've been able to source the correct cost basis for power, and just really had my eyes open to what's possible in the mid-scale mining scene. And but haven't forgotten my roots. I'm very much about helping the individual. That's where we make a difference, right? Is at the grassroots. So that's who I speak to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, that was a very, I think you covered basically the first three questions I was going to ask you there. So, yeah, I guess we'll just jump to the fourth one, which is jumping into mining, or rather, I guess before we dive into that, how did you first get your like business started, and like what was sort of the motivations behind that, and maybe if you want to also share, like, how did you come up with the name?
Sure. Well, the name MineYour.Biz, I was incredulous when I found out that nobody had claimed it since 2008 in the Bitcoin scene or in the cryptocurrency scene. I thought, okay, surely there's somebody with the handle MineYour.Biz. I looked, I searched, I looked through bitcointalk.org and trolled all the forums, and I just couldn't find it. And I thought, this is unbelievable. So I'm going to snap this up. Then I went to a domain registrar and looked for MineYour.Biz, and I was incredulous that nobody had ever purchased that domain, let alone, I mean, it was to be purchased for like the bare bones minimum for a .biz top level domain. I thought, okay, this is unreal. I mean, it's not like a sign from the heavens or whatever, but I'd be a fool not to just take it because I'm already thinking that way, and this is the kind of content that I want to make. So what the heck? We'll start a brand and well, we'll go from there. But as far as starting the business itself, what was the business case? I mean, first off, I started up an LLC that was related to some of my cryptocurrency activities and related to some of the things that I wanted to do in the space, including content creation. That is the entity that's responsible for me receiving AdSense revenue, what little trickles in.
Yeah.
Thank you, YouTube. Totally different game now. But anything else, right? Brand deals or any kind of sponsored content or anything else, I knew I needed a corporate structure. And so I built that before my channel really took off. And that came from a little bit of personal background and kind of getting my sea legs within entrepreneurship and doing solo ventures for content creation and education. In fact, before I started in cryptocurrency, but kind of as I was tapering off the corporate training gig specifically for Microsoft, I had a couple of best-selling courses on Udemy and had a significant following there. I've got about I think it's over almost 14,000 unique students on Udemy.
Wow.
And over 20,000 enrolled students across a couple different courses. So all that is to say, I was familiar with the process of setting up the correct corporate structure for what it was that I wanted to do in the territories that I wanted to do it. And I thought, okay, well, I mean, this is a new venture. I should probably make a new entity, and I should probably create a new brand and mind your biz. I can't believe it's open. It's available. Nobody took it. So it just sort of all lined up really well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then from there, you've just kind of been, and how long has it been since you started that?
Wow, that was end of 2017 that I I made that brand, and it is managed by a corporate entity that is not named MineYour.Biz.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of free alpha for anybody who's wondering. Again, not a CPA, and I don't consult in that space, but it's not usually best practice to have a fully vertically integrated brand if you have a holding company or if you have a corporation that manages all of your business affairs. Just name it something really boring, like potato company, Potato Inc. And just you don't want it to be a giant attack surface, right, for third parties.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, there's a ridiculous amount of things that we could get into about just like finessing with your business and being an entrepreneur, but we've only got so much time. So my next question is like, what are your thoughts on how censorship is affecting legacy platforms today? Just before we dove into this, we were talking about how Joe Rogan was, supposed to be making a move for the better, but it really seems like it's just as bad, if not worse. And then how are you kind of dealing with that, and like what decentralized platforms are you using today?
That's a really loaded series of questions. I'll start from the top because I mean we commented before you started rolling though. I mean we could film a mini series just with that topic alone, right?
Yeah.
And you've got, I'm sure, a couple playlists that are related to alternative platforms. So again, here I'll show a CTA to your audience. Check out Scott's other content related to all the platforms that he's tested out because he's put in the hours. So it's impressive. But my thoughts, just kind of topically on the matter, are that with Joe Rogan, I mean, man, on the one hand, like, we were all cheering him on, like, sweet, he broke out of YouTube. And on the other hand, we're like, oh man, he's just another Judas, right? Like, he betrayed us all with a kiss, right? Like, and here he is committing whatever. And my dad used to have a saying that everybody has their price, but if your price is less than a few $1 million, you're an idiot. What did Spotify pay him to switch platforms? A few $1 million, right? More than a few.
Yeah,
so I'm
more
thinking,
than a few.
Yeah, it was a good move for him by way of brand building. He's got it like that. He's put in the work, right? If anybody has in the podcasting space, it's Joe Rogan and his team. And the guys that were setting up his live streams 5 years ago are still doing it, and they're drawing a decent paycheck. So kudos to all of them. And they probably didn't have a whole lot of say in the matter. But yeah, the censorship obviously still continues. Spotify is, they're really no different. You look at the terms of service of Spotify, Twitch, and now in the air quotes decentralized space, entrants that are largely centralized in terms of the content delivery, like DLive. It's like, their terms of service are really no different from Twitch or YouTube gaming or any other streaming platform, right? So we were looking at Mixer too, right? Like all the ones that are owned by the FANG companies. Apple, if you're watching, please don't make a streaming service. We don't really want it. Right? And people will use it, but there's no need. But it's all centralized. With the decentralized, air quotes, decentralized platforms, I've come to the conclusion that the ones that are most decentralized, that are hardest to take down, are actually still hardest to use. The user experience leaves a lot to be desired, right? The 3Speaks, the DTubes, the libraries, even to some extent, they have some limitations, sometimes some really hard limitations to deal with as a content creator, for whether it is video propagation or just changing the thumbnail. Like, that might be really challenging on some of these platforms, but that's a signal that they're truly decentralized, that it's difficult to access servers that deliver the content out to your audience. And on the flip side, DLive, it's like really easy and it always works. And the uptime is always perfect, but they deplatformed Alex Jones, like, first thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I mean, I'm no Alex Jones lover, but he's a really good canary in the coal mine. If they can deplatform Alex Jones, they're not really decentralized, right? Or certainly not committed to
Yeah.
censorship resistance.
Yeah, I've always said it's like if you go on a platform and some person who's banned on a lot of other platforms is just pre-banned on this platform, clearly they don't care about free speech because they didn't wait for him to do something on that platform and then maybe take an action. They're just like, nah, our rules already like have all these pre-reckon like conditions set into them. And yeah, like when you actually look at like even how the wallet works with DLive, you can't withdraw any tokens whether or not you've deposited them or you've earned them. You can't withdraw them until you KYC. You have to have minimum withdraw amounts. You have to have streamed on the platform, which makes no sense because if you've deposited coins and you're not a streamer, that's gone. You can't get that money back unless you decide to turn on a stream for 72 hours and then you can get it. But there's a lot of, and that would also inflate their metrics crazily if everyone was just streaming for like 3 days just to get their money. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of issues with, I found the most issues with decentralized social platforms to be around like the live streaming ones. So like, I definitely think, like Library, Hive, they're way further along, and there's still some issues on all of them. Everything has their like caveats, but yeah, I think live streaming is just a really big mess. But I mean, a lot of it too is also like Justin Sun trying to acquire all these different platforms and then kind of make them more centralized, which is really unfortunate with Steam and DLive. But what's your favorite one to use, or like what do you find yourself using the most?
Well, it's fast becoming Library. Honestly, just it's fast becoming Library. The absolute favorite. I stuck with BitTube for a long time, from the humble beginnings to the bitter end of their domain bit.tube. I was the first creator there to break 1,000 subscribers, and little feather in my cap. I was the first creator there to hand out 5 figures of coin rewards, which using their reward paradigm for attention measuring, which I felt really good about. Until they said, yeah, we're going to take this really hard left turn. We're going to ditch that top level domain. We're going to go to bittube.tv. We're going to go to bittube.video. We're going to go to bittube.app. And all these different top level domains are going to do different things instead of having like a cohesive brand. And then further, a few weeks ago, them saying, yeah, Google delisted us. It's like, wait, what do you mean Google delisted you? Oh, wait, most of your app was being hosted on Firebase. Like if you know a bit about development, that's Google's platform for quickly launching applications. And it's like, all right, so wow, like that was really fragile. That was all like basically a house of cards. The attention rewards mechanism is largely decentralized, and their token is totally decentralized and based on the same privacy tech as Monero. So I'm still very much an advocate and a fan of that. But as a video platform, that just for me, I kind of put the last nail in the coffin where I said, I'm not doing unique uploads to this platform anymore. And Library, conversely, they've got the reward system. They have the staking system to help boost content. They've been very generous to creators. Did you get a care package from them as well?
Yeah, I've got the, I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of blocked by the mic, but I have the original founding creator certificate in the background there.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Wait, oh, you could probably see it, but everyone else watching can't see it right there. It's pretty small. It's hard to see, but yeah, they sent me a little founding creator certificate and a locked USB stick of quite a few LBC that I cannot touch until February 2022.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, they did things a little bit differently. They sent the care package sent to me, and I'm sorry, I don't have it for show and tell here. It's in a slightly more secure location. Location. Wow, I'm kind of slurring my speech. It's getting late in the day, man. Yeah. If we had Ken Bosak looped in, he'd say it's almost 4:20, Seth. Gotta go relax. No. I don't think that's the problem. I think maybe it's either a little too much or a little too little caffeine. But they sent me a care package that had a really kind letter, and it's a little bit different. I think it's the second wave, and I'll redact the number of LBC that was sent here as well, just because we don't help the community by showing that off. Yeah. But there's a little letter right here, signed by Julie Sigwart, right there, community manager, and she sent a little. It looks like almost like a little emergency, like what you would find a fire. What is a sprinkler button, right, for the fire alarm inside of a building. It's got a little glass front to it. It says "break in case of censorship," and so they say like, okay, you can use these whenever you want. The ones they sent to me are not locked, And I think their intent and hope, it's likely a lower amount too in that second wave. But I think their intent was that creators would use it to boost support on their videos
Yeah.
if they felt they needed to. So
Yeah.
that was super cool, them being supportive in that way.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I look to see how, like you're saying, if there's controversy in the space, seeing how a platform either supports or acknowledges or doesn't acknowledge, like how they respond to controversy on their platform when it comes to content. The way the library has responded to, of all sectors, the 3D gun printing community, which is for some people like, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing ever. 3D printing guns, like the world is less safe. But on the other hand, the people who say that that code is speech, right, and that speech should be free, that's their argument. Library has taken a stance that, like, well, they're files, and right now, if they're digital files, they harm no one, and the legality of that whole, like, having 3D files, like STL files that could be used to print into even just small firearm parts that are unregulated, the legality of that in the United States, at least, is pretty well documented. Characters like Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed in Austin, Texas, where right where all these other characters are, the Alex Joneses and now the Joe Rogans. He was brought to court so many times, numerous times, and a lot of the defensibility of having those kinds of files hosted somewhere, it's strong. It's legal precedent now here in the United States. And so the library team has said, well, we believe in the rule of law. We believe in the American Constitution, where they're based here in the United States. And so we think that we can support this and we'll host those files. And if somebody tells us to take them down, we're going to ask them for a legal writ, right? For legal precedent. They have to present to us some kind of documentation proving that a court has ordered this. Because we're not just going to cave if somebody says we don't like that makes us uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So again, without taking a stance or a side for myself on that topic, I believe that's where library has gone. And I think, to your point from before, like, if that's a strong indication of how they support people's freedom of speech and how they support controversial figures who may say unpopular things. Mm-hmm. So that to me was huge. I said, all right, These guys, they can be taken seriously. They don't have downtime. They treat creators who are educating with the utmost respect and care. And then with people who are controversial, they don't automatically ban them.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I think that's so big, and as well as like another good example was when Trav Crypto, another popular library creator, when he had issues with the Library Foundation, which is completely separate from library, and he had voiced his opinion, and he put a lot of LBC behind it, like 700,000 or something. So like he was front page many days in a row, and it's like, like they're not doing anything to like stop that or, try to circumvent that. So I think that is really, really important too. Like that there's no efforts to kind of silence someone, even if they're like front page and they're completely against the platform itself. So like that is really good to see that they're completely fair on that, and everything that you talked about. I was actually somewhat unaware of that whole issue, so I'm glad you actually kind of brought me up to speed on that. And for anyone watching, I definitely think that's a very, very good use case to refer to as to why they actually do support free speech. So I think we could go on and on about decentralized platforms the whole time we're here, but I'd like to dive into passive income because you definitely are the person to go to for this. So before we dive into the entire mining scene, what are some like simple ways that you're earning crypto passive income for people who are watching?
Well, I mean, to keep the main thing and kind of segue from our last bit of conversation, LBC staking is not a bad way to go. I mean, there are rewards to be had by staking and supporting content creators, even if you're not a content creator yourself. I mean, for your viewers right now, you guys, did you know you can do what's called revocable support for Scott's videos right here on Library? So you can contribute to the visibility of a video like this one right here by just giving revocable support. And then when it goes through its logical sort of peak viewership time frame, maybe after a few weeks and after a month or so, you can take that support away, and it doesn't harm him in any way. It doesn't harm the video you've supported in any way, but it has made it more viewable. And then you can share in some rewards by staking his content. So just as one example, right? So the library is actually a really great way to go if you're very passive, but you really like viewing content. If there are content creators on YouTube, you can petition them to at least just forward their content over to the library. It's free for them. A lot of YouTube creators have done it. Big names in the YouTube space have done it because they don't really lose much by just getting their content pulled over into library. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. There are a lot of very passive viewership models like that. Steemit was great when the funds were flowing. It got weird, like you mentioned before, when Justin Sun, in his quest to gobble up the entire world, kind of got a bite out of Steemit, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, yeah, that's, I don't think, a really great option. I mentioned it before, BitTube. I really like, it's not that the rewards are very high there, but I really like that they're always private by default because the coin itself is based on Monero. So ring signatures, stealth addresses, just some really great technology that makes it harder to track. So KYC, yeah, not so much. You don't have to use it to be able to remove rewards from any site that's monetized with BitTube. If you run a blog, if you even have like a popular Facebook page, if you're into that sort of thing, you can associate that with a BitTube ID and you can receive passive rewards just by having content on the web that people like to watch. And unlike Basic Attention Token or Brave Browser, you don't have to KYC with a third party. You don't need their permission to withdraw. You don't have anybody checking that off and telling your country's IRS before you have a chance to sift through it and make sure you actually gain the rewards and saw any increase in your finance. It's entirely in your control. It's a lot like cash. So that's the first category, is passive stuff that is just based on typical user behavior. So looking on the internet, and then programs like, I'm sure you've talked about it, Lolly, Fold, other rewards programs for just making purchases with a plugin on your browser and then getting some kind of crypto rewards back when you purchase the fiat. Then, yeah, so that's the first thing. Everybody says like, well, I definitely want it to be like mining. Now, when we step into mining, whether it's a masternode, which would be like proof of stake rewards, or it's a mining rig with GPUs or these big ASICs, I got a really good visual aid here, but I'd have to shift some stuff around. I've actually got a wall of boxes next to me.
Oh, jeez.
All filled with mining rigs. None of those are deployed. Those are all for sale on one of my e-commerce outlets. But I've got a rig off to my other side. It's turned off so that it doesn't pollute the sound from our interview. It's very loud. But before you get into buying several hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of equipment, as you know, that's a bit of a commitment, right? That's a business plan unto itself.
Yeah.
Like if you were to become a cab driver and you wanted to start from scratch, right? Like no federation, no union, no company hiring you. You just buy your own cab and get started. That'd be a really scary thing. Even if like a food truck, right? As a business owner, like you got the secret recipe for the best tacos in all of your town. Buying that food truck, making sure that it passes code, getting, all those little steps, so the licenses and everything else, making sure that you're going to earn money. That's actually the last thing on the list. You can calculate it and do some maths beforehand, but then there's still some risk at the end when you finally execute. And mining is a lot that way. With masternodes, a little bit less of a risk because you're buying coins and you're locking up coins. And if at any point you get cold feet, provided you've chosen the project well and there's enough market depth and liquidity to just sell, you can bail. Right? You can unlock those coins. You can market dump them if you had to. It's a terrible thing to do, but you can just bail out. You can get your money out. So that's the next one is masternodes there. So that's why I like to put that before people look at any kind of proof of work mining. I like to put that first as an option. If you had $100 to spend on a masternode, there are some masternodes where that would buy you enough collateral to get started. There are a couple of good sites for that as well. So masternodes.pro and masternodes.online. And people can look for different coins that have some of those features. Low barrier of entry, show you the market depth, and show you the internal rate of return or the ROI. So yeah, I think that's the first thing, is just do a little bit of homework on the kinds of masternodes that fit the budget that you can bear to lose. And then same is true of mining. We hear it in the cryptocurrency space, right? Never invest more than you're willing to lose. Totally true of passive income in this space too, because you could buy mining rigs and then something terrible could happen and has happened in the past. We've seen it where if you buy an ASIC miner, these little mining boxes that are designed for mining Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin, it's the only way you can mine those cryptocurrencies. So you could buy one of those boxes from China directly from a manufacturer, give them a 50% deposit or 100% deposit, and they might take 5 weeks to get to you. In the interim, your money went out and you were earning nothing. So there's a lot of risk involved. It's really difficult to factor all of that stuff in. So you've got to do even more homework when it comes to proof of work mining. But then the category of mining that I endorse most strongly and talk about most frequently on my channel is GPU mining and small scale mining. And that's really easy for somebody who's already a gamer to get started with. So I'll just ask you, Scott, do you do any kind of video games on a PC?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you play?
I don't know. I mean, recently I've been playing Among Us and Fall Guys.
Got it. And are you like super into like high performance? Do you need those high frame rates? Have you considered getting a really fancy graphics card?
I mean, I have a pretty good graphics card. Like I built my entire computer, but I don't really usually take it super seriously when I'm playing video games. It's more just so that I can, I've got like 3 monitors in front of me, and I'm just I'm pretty intense with my setup. It's not so much for gaming, but I mean, yeah, I could play on ultra settings if I wanted.
Awesome. Okay. What that tells me, just knowing that's the setup that you already have everything necessary to do at least some speculative GPU mining, but in today's market to mine Ethereum profitably, actually. So maybe it's for $1 or $2 a day, but I mean, what else is the GPU doing all day when you're at work and, when you've got other stuff going on?
Mm-hmm.
So when you flip that into mining during times when you're not otherwise producing media or you're not otherwise playing games, because it's powerful enough to play a game on ultra settings, it's definitely powerful enough to mine. That's kind of the benchmark,
Yeah,
for the most part. But which model do you have, if you don't mind me asking kind of a geeky question?
yeah. I mean, I have a really old 1080X, I believe. Honestly, I could be wrong, but yeah, I made it like 5 or 6 years ago. So it's been quite a while since I built that PC, and I haven't upgraded it since. Though I might in the near future. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot that's come out from both AMD and NVIDIA, the major graphics card manufacturers.
Yeah.
A lot that they've announced and a lot that's coming out. It's pretty exciting. So you did the right thing by waiting a little longer, right? The longer you wait, the more you're rewarded by consumer technology for the most part. Same with phones and watches and everything else.
Yeah.
Stuff just gets better, faster,
Yeah.
and cheaper. But the reason I ask if is it the NVIDIA 1080?
Yeah.
Okay. So the NVIDIA 1080, just off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, the numbers would be somewhere around 40 mega hashes per second on Ethereum, roughly, give or take. Could be a little bit more depending on if you use certain kinds of software. And again, using some crude maths in my head, if your cost basis for power where you live is even close to 10 cents per kilowatt hour, even if it's upwards of 14 or 15 cents per kilowatt hour, that's going to earn you roughly $1 a day, maybe a little bit more, beyond the cost of electricity each and every day. So your power bill will go up at the end of the month, but it'll be entirely offset by the amount of Ethereum you just mined. So even with just one card that you have running, if it's 24 hours a day, that could be about $30 of profit per month. That's added to that portfolio of all the other different ways that you're earning passively. And that's without lifting a finger other than to set up a little start script on your Windows computer so that every time you're not editing videos or you're not playing video games, you just remember, okay, I'm going to click that, double click that. It'll launch a little mining software. And then, yeah, the fans will spin up and it'll get a little warmer in your room. Going into that time of year where maybe that's not a bad thing, though, right?
Yeah.
Little generated heat right there in the room. But that's the only difference that you'll notice is that your computer's left on all day. And then the fans are going at 100% when you're not sitting at the desk. So once you get used to that sound of like, all right, well, what is that? That's my computer making money for me passively. Like it becomes a little more beloved a sound. Right?
Yeah.
You walk in the room and you're like, all right, I'm mining, like right on. So, but that's the way that most people can start. So using you as that case study there, anybody who's got a GPU in a gaming oriented PC they can get started with mining very easily. It's really just a couple of downloads. They're only a couple downloads away from mining to an Ethereum pool and getting rewards. Not every 24 hours, gas fees are really high. You'd lose all your profit if you did that, but on a rotating payout, maybe once a month or so.
Hmm. Yeah, and and obviously they can go to learn all about that by checking out your channel, of course. But for people who are a little more like, you know what, like I'm down to put a little bit of money into it. Maybe they want to get like they'll go up with the route of a master node, and then maybe like what does that look like? Because I know a lot of what I see, in the Twitter verse of crypto, and in a lot of the platforms that I use, I see a lot of people talking about master nodes, and that's kind of the big thing right now. So if you want to just dive a little bit into like how much effort is it going to take to set up, and like how much money maybe would people need to actually get started doing that?
It's a great question. Yeah, great series of questions. So as far as the initial capital expense, like just figuring out how, like my first bulk purchase, you'd have to check out the sort of the past performance indicators of coins that you'd want to set up a masternode with, or masternode for. For anybody who's watching your channel that isn't aware of what a masternode does and how it generates the value, so that they don't think it's some kind of Ponzi, because there are some projects that have been accused of being Ponzi's because they launch and they sell a bunch of masternodes, and then you wonder, like, how are you funding development? How is value being created here? And you're still selling more masternodes directly from the developer team. There definitely have been some bad apples, right, in the past within the masternode space. But the way that masternodes offer value to people who run them is that masternodes are used in a proof of stake consensus for cryptocurrencies. So in the same way that Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and other proof of work coins, they achieve consensus by having a bunch of different mining rigs that use hashing algorithms, which are very compute intensive. We call that proof of work mining. They use that method to agree on what the correct version of the blockchain is. Masternode coins and proof of stake coins, they use a slightly different system of checks and balances, where locking up coins in a separate copy of the blockchain, and then having them run a staking consensus, where those who hold some of the highest stake of coins have the highest trust score. I'm kind of oversimplifying, and there's more than one way to achieve rewards within a masternode system, but this is one way, is proof of stake. They then check with each other instead of running really compute intensive hashing algorithms to ensure they have the right answer, and then compete for each other to then put that hash into the next block for the blockchain, and then issue cryptocurrencies as a reward. I'm getting really long-winded here. It's kind of nerdy, but masternodes, they just compare their copy of the blockchain. Essentially, they just compare their copy, and essentially, this is layman's terms, some of the masternodes that have the highest stake, or some of the masternode holders that have the highest stake when they use proof of stake consensus, they have a higher trust score because they have more to lose if they lie. So it's kind of a different reward system. But those masternodes, they're in a separate machine that you might run on a cloud service like Vultr or DigitalOcean. It's very rare that you would run it on a piece of your own hardware at home, but you could. Generally speaking, though, you want to rent a cloud server, because then the IP address of that cloud server isn't your home address, which will be broadcast to the network. So personal OPSEC, you generally don't want to run a masternode from home, because everybody who queries that network will know, like, oh, so this masternode is named Scott C Business. Like, what? I wonder who's running that. And then, like, they check the IP address, they ping it, and they realize, oh, that's a residential address, and then they know where you live. Right? Like, kind of scary. So you want to run it on a cloud server generally. So there'll be a fee associated with that. That could be $5. It could be $10 a month, depending on the performance demands of that coin network. So a coin network like Horizon, they are a fork of Zcash, but Horizon, theirs is going to cost, a bit down. They've got a couple different sizes of masternodes. So you might have to lay out a few $100s, but practically the same as laying out cash for a brand new GPU. The difference is you'll have just the coins, and you'll sign a transaction and they'll have a how-to guide for you on their website. You'll sign a transaction from your wallet where you hold the coins. They're not sent out to that cloud server. So the same way you might hold coins on a wallet on your desktop for any other kind of cryptocurrency, you'll hold them in the same way, but you'll sign a transaction that then communicates to the network and to that masternode. This server that Scott has rented, it's authorized to validate transactions on this coin network. That kind of sets it in motion. And then rewards are paid out to the wallet that you have on your desktop. But in the meantime, that same amount of cash, those several $100s that maybe you're going to buy that GPU upgrade with, you'll have those held in the native coin. In this case, maybe Horizon. But yeah, that was a long explanation, but is it pretty clear?
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everyone else as well. That was pretty technical, but I mean, feel free to rewind and watch as needed. Yeah, like, so for someone who's just getting into it, is there any like easier master nodes that they might be able to get started with versus like, I mean, obviously everything is going to have different costs, different, difficulty associated, but do you think there's like a good like starting place for people, maybe even just to dip their toes in, not so much as like a financial like recommendation or advice, but rather just kind of like, this is how you could easily get started with like the least resistance?
Yeah. So there are a couple of masternode marketplaces. There are a couple of services that will set up masternodes for you. There are a couple of masternode services that will allow you to do partial ownership. And now with Ethereum and other smart contract platforms, you can do partial ownership of all kinds of masternodes where the collateral is held up in a smart contract. I don't have ready recommendations for those platforms. One coin that comes to mind, and this is not an endorsement in any way, but the Divi project is very simple to set up. So previous projects or projects that came prior to Divi were Jin Coin, and they had a platform that made it very easy to launch other coins, but you had to have all of the collateral necessary for a masternode for those coins. So in the case of a coin like Dash, a masternode for Dash is still not cheap. And at the peak of the bull run, a masternode for Dash was nearly $500,000 US. It was very pricey. So, and it's only come back, I think now it's only like $80,000 US. So
only,
yeah, chump change.
Yeah.
But less. So some of these platforms like Gincoin make it easy to launch the masternodes, but you still have to have all of that money, all those coins up front to be able to launch them still. So ease of use plus cost. I'm of the opinion that if you're looking for something that has much higher rewards or is much more steady, like a Dash masternode, and you have that kind of collateral, find somebody who's a specialist in it. Really look for the expert that can stand behind setting those up and doing maybe custodial masternode setup for you, or can recommend a platform like that where you can do partial masternode custody.
Yeah, because if you're going to be putting in thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, you should definitely make sure you're doing it right. Is there any other ways that you earn passive income? Like for me, for example, one interesting thing that I use is Realty, which is like a tokenized real estate platform. And then I earn rent from those properties when I just hold the token in my wallet. So I love that. Unfortunately, it's not a very good recommendation to a lot of my followers because you have to be an accredited investor in the US. But anywhere else, you're good to go. So, I mean, me in Canada, luckily, I can invest in that really easily. I'm curious, like, do you know of any other like tokenized projects or anything in real estate or that you're using to maybe just invest in general, like crypto gold, tokenized crypto gold, or other forms of passive income?
So projects like that, I tend to stay away from only because they're outside of my wheelhouse, not because I think that they're like, capital S scams, right? Like there's not, that's such an overused word. And frankly, it's unfair for a lot of projects like this. Even with some MLMs, for example, where it's like, the incentives are obviously to recruit people. There's no value being created somewhere else, but doesn't necessarily mean it's a scam. I'm very loath to use that word.
Yeah.
As far as other projects, I'm very focused on mining. It takes up enough of my attention and masternodes too. And then looking up looking out for projects like that I can review and get very hands-on and technical with. So outside of that, it's content creation oriented stuff that I'm most heavily involved in, because these are things that I know and understand. So, and that's the advice that I hear most frequently from people who are right, investment professionals and people who can give advice in that space. They always tell me, invest in things you understand. So that's where I stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agreed. Yeah, like the things that I'm trying to like, I'm looking for more real estate in crypto because it is kind of hard to find like a good project. Most of them I've kind of just, reviewed and tossed aside. But and then the next thing I want to look into is tokenized gold, because I think that'll be an interesting thing to check out. For in terms of like misconceptions that people have about crypto mining, just the space in general. Do you have any tips or misconceptions you want to kind of squash around mining and staking and passive income?
Sure. Wow. I'm trying to think of the top misconception regarding mining. And I think the top misconception regarding mining is that miners are selfish.
Mm.
So I guess to take that one head on, the answer is well, the answer is like using the toilet in your 70s. Depends, right? It could potentially be that yes, miners are very selfish because they have to sell off coins in order to pay their electricity. So it may seem that they're selfish. Or you could just view that as a cost of doing business and roll it into the game theory, right? Price it in to your projections and your expectations of income or some kind of return on investment. So, yeah, but I'm going to say largely they're not selfish, really. They're engaged in a business that has costs, and so occasionally they have to sell before they want to, because their electricity bill has come due and they don't want the lights shut off. So
Yeah.
the same is true for mining at home. If you did get that GTX 1080 that's in your gaming rig running every single day for mining, you would definitely, even if you had power built into your rental or the place where you live, even if you somehow had that build alongside or rolled into your rent somehow, your landlord would say like, hey, there was kind of this weird spike. I mean,
Yeah.
your power bill was like $50 higher this month. Like, what happened? Did you set up a space heater or something? And they'd want to know, right? Like they'd want to know. So like really nobody gets away from the costs for some of these activities. And then with masternodes too, common misconception with masternodes is that all of them were Ponzi's, right? Because there were a few that came out and said, we're going to do, instead of an initial coin offering, we're going to sell enough collateral in full masternode sized chunks for people to then set up their masternodes and contribute. The reality is every coin has volatility. Every coin, when it hits exchange or when it does its initial offering, whether it's through an exchange, right? Like an IEO, or it's a coin offering from back in the day, or it's an STO and it's regulated somehow, coins carry risk. Crypto carries risk, right? So I don't think masternodes are any more or less risky than any other kind of coin. So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
two, put those out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I think when people see the Ethereum gas fees, they're thinking like, what are those miners doing over there with those gas fees? But it's like obviously from if they're paying attention to this whole conversation, there's a lot of work that goes into mining, and there's a lot of expertise, and clearly a lot of nerdy stuff that you have to kind of get your head around. And there's they're taking their fair share too, because everyone's got to eat. So those are most of the questions that I had for today. I have a few fun ones before we end off. What are your thoughts around like diversification? Would you call yourself like a maximalist of any coins, or are you pretty like open to different coins? And what are your thoughts there?
Well, it's funny. I forget where I picked this term up exactly, like who I picked it up from, but it was definitely on crypto Twitter, which is just a wealth, right, of memery and fun phrases. But I'm kind of a Bitcoin maximalist, definitely not a maximalist though. So Bitcoin maximalist, I definitely believe in the future and kind of the ultimate destination of Bitcoin becoming a sort of a de facto reserve currency. It's kind of already kind of a de facto reserve currency within crypto. Like we compare new coins in their Satoshi value to Bitcoin, right?
Mhm.
And coins that are sub Satoshi, when we have to revert to like Dogecoin or Litecoin as a reserve currency to trade certain coins, we think, all right, well, you're not quite there yet. We're just going to put you back in the oven and let you bake a little bit, right? Like as soon as they're comparable to Bitcoin, it's like, all right, cool. Now they're serious.
Yeah.
So we kind of already made it a unit of account in a way. So that's why I would characterize myself as a Bitcoin maximalist, not because I'm like, it's Bitcoin only. And, and you better learn how to use Tor and Samurai and Whirlpool and use the coin joins and, and reclaim your privacy by using Bitcoin only. And if you stack anything other than Satoshis within Bitcoin, then cause and Satoshi hates you. I just don't buy it. Right. It's like, mess me with the guilt trip. Bitcoin's very useful. It was much more useful years ago. Frankly, if I had to transact in Bitcoin every single day today, it'd be painful, right? Like it just would be. And I run an e-commerce shop. We accept Bitcoin as payment, and I don't mind receiving it, but I hate like when my finger's on the button, I'm getting ready to send somebody an item or talk to my drop shipper or my print shop. And I'm looking for confirmations to come in on Bitcoin. I'm like, I can't do it yet. Like I have to defer all this work for tomorrow when I've got a free minute to be able to bash this work. And so Bitcoin is great until it's not. But absolutely, I'm a multi-coiner. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Because I was interviewing someone like just before this, like maybe an hour ago, or I guess 2 hours ago now. But yeah, and they said too, like I've kind of gone back to Bitcoin. I see a lot of people sort of they breached out, they looked at all these altcoins and stuff, and now they're kind of like, I kind of going back to the fundamentals, going back to Bitcoin. I see a lot of people doing that. I'm doing that too. I'm kind of, changing things up, getting a little bit more hedged back into Bitcoin, and Ethereum is just like the two, go-to cryptocurrencies. What are your thoughts on, I guess I said I was gonna end this off soon, but this one might be a long-winded one. What are your thoughts on like ETH 2.0 and how that might change, a lot in this space, and especially with like staking too?
Yeah, well, you're not kidding. You did open up a can of worms there. ETH 2.0 is, I mean, it's another one for a mini series, right? Of videos. And if you had like an array of guests to talk about it, it'd be time well spent, I think.
Yeah.
Because ETH 2.0 really is that interesting. It's polarizing too, right? When you talk to people who are Bitcoin maximalists, their knee-jerk response is, well, all of Ethereum's been a scam the entire time, and it's the scam coin that launches other scam coins. I just don't have time for that. It also works, right? And it's useful for what it's useful for. And when gas fees are really, really high, it's a little more painful to transact in, but it's still useful for what it does by way of the Ethereum virtual machine. There's still developers that develop on it because it's useful to them. So, but minimizing the cost basis and the cost exposure of using Ethereum that's a priority for everybody right now, right? When you're paying $10 or more, 20. I mean, I've had a couple of transactions where I did bite the bullet and paid $40 in transactions on Ethereum, which is like crazy. I mean, if I told myself that would be the case even 4 months ago, I would have laughed, been like, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
But I had a use case, so I did. Ethereum 2.0 with proof of stake. Wow. It's going to drastically affect the cost model for gas and gas fees. They're going to be able to introduce extreme discounts within the gas fee system, but it's not going to get rid of ETH 1.0 and proof of work. So, I mean, my crystal ball is telling me we're going to see just pandemonium in the same way that, everyone's talking about politically, right? About the same time, election time here in the United States, we're going to see all kinds of really unpredictable things just kind of pop out of the woodwork. And, 2020, the meme that keeps on giving, right? The year that keeps on giving us more meme fodder, right? Like it's going to continue with ETH 2.0, I think. So just what we thought was crazy before, buckle up.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And yeah, like you make a good point where, it doesn't seem very feasible right now to be transacting on. So the way that I've sort of like looked at and explained to other people when I'm talking about different cryptocurrencies is I would say Bitcoin is kind of like, your digital store of value, like gold. Ethereum to me is kind of like the developmental place, it's like Web 3.0, and then you got like Bitcoin Cash, Dash. That's more of like my daily transacting type coins. A lot of coins have a lot of different use cases, so I think it's important for people to sort of wrap their minds around that instead of just being like, they are all cryptocurrencies, and if you just invest in the right one, that's how you win. When realistically, they all have different use cases and reasons why you would invest in them. So,
Yeah.
leading off of that, if you had $100,000 to invest into one asset today, which could be gold or something, not even crypto, what would that be?
It's taking me just a moment to think about it, because there are some things that are worth more than anything. The top among them, and I know this is, I'm gonna Garfunkel you here, Scott. The top asset is always your life, your health, your well-being. And not to be too alarmist, right? Not to be too weird, but I would invest first off in the means of preserving my life. And I'll like bounce this back to anybody in your audience who may be watching, who may be carrying a disproportionate amount of specifically consumer debt or any other kind of debt that is very onerous. Debt drains your life, right? It absolutely destroys everything else that you're working on. And we don't often talk about it on our shows, right? On different crypto shows, because we're very excited about the speculative nature of investing in cryptos and other stuff. But yeah, that'd be the first thing I'd invest in is making sure that if there are any loose ends anywhere that are dragging my life down, get rid of those.
Yeah.
Make sure those loose ends are totally tied up. And then in addition to that, I'm something of a prepper. And
I've gotten into that too. I'm sure a lot of people have started to change their view on the whole prepping scene lately.
Yeah. And I mean, and hindsight is, flawless, right? I don't want to reuse that joke. It's dead. But, hindsight, we know everything that was related to prepper work and prepping, it's gone up. It's gone up at least 25%, if not 30%. In some cases, it's gone up 400+%. So I'm really big into legal firearms, like legally acquired firearms, depending on the territory that your audience may be in. I'm not out like trying to, start fights with people or do anything crazy. But I live in an area where that's protected, right? Constitutionally protected to be able to own firearms. If somebody had told me, hey, Seth, the cost of .22 long rifle, a tiny little plinking round that's normally used for practice, it's going to go from a couple of cents a round all the way up to almost 40 cents a round. I would have bought as much as my house could carry, and I would have started reselling it right now. So if I had $100,000 6 months ago, if I could go back in time, I literally would be buying nothing but ammunition. Wow. Because no crypto has performed in the same way.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of ways to make money that people wouldn't even think about. And I mean, you could apply the same thing to crypto or to stocks or anything. Is what you're basically talking about is, leveraging opportunities and take advantage of arbitrage, and that's key no matter where you're investing. So with that, I think that's a really succinct spot to end it on. And before we do, though, where can everyone go to learn more about you and about MineYour.Biz?
Well, thanks so much for having me. And again, it's been a great conversation. Best place to find my content, best place to interact with me is at MineYour.Biz on the web, or on Twitter, MineYour_biz.
Awesome. So everyone, make sure to go follow him. Check out everything he's got going on. Follow him on Library, YouTube, BitTube. So many different platforms, but you'll be able to find him and check out his content there. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. And again, everyone, make sure to go and check out MineYour.Biz and all of his stuff.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers.
Thanks so much for watching this video to the very end. Since you did, it'd be awesome if you could give this video a like and comment #1ham in the comments below. Also, it'd be awesome if you could subscribe to this channel and follow me anywhere under @ScottCBusiness, because I'm basically on every platform. You can find all the platforms that I am mainly using, though, at www.scottcbusiness.com. You can also find all my social links as well as my crypto addresses if you'd like to donate to me on Cointree at cointr.ee/ScottCBusiness. And you can also donate directly by donating to scottcbusiness.crypto or scottcbusiness.eth with supporting wallets. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate your support. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scott C Business, signing off. Cheers.